Hamas reaffirms full commitment to implementing all terms of Gaza ceasefire agreement. President Trump announces productive talks on Gaza and ongoing efforts for Middle East solutions. Delegations from Israel, Qatar and the US arrive in Cairo for ongoing Gaza ceasefire negotiations. It's 8 p.m. Cairo local time and you're watching Qnews. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. The death toll in Gaza from Israeli attacks since October 2023 has reached over 48,365, with 111,780 others injured. According to Gaza health authorities, hospitals in the region received 17 more bodies and 19 wounded individuals in the past 48 hours. According to Egypt's State Information Service, intensive discussions are underway to advance the ongoing truce deal and ensure the implementation of previous agreements. Hamas has reaffirmed its full commitment to implementing all terms of the Gaza ceasefire agreement in every phase and detail. The group has urged the international community to pressure Israel into fulfilling its obligations under the deal and immediately proceeding to the second phase without delay or evasion. Israeli media, citing an official source, has reported that Israel will not commit to the ceasefire agreement unless a resolution is reached on Gaza's future, including efforts to dismantle Hamas Authority. Earlier reports indicated that Israel is willing to maintain the ceasefire in exchange for time-limited negotiations on the release of living detainees. However, sources added that without a deal on detainees' release, humanitarian aid deliveries to Gaza will not continue. China has reiterated its firm support for the Palestinian people's struggle to restore their legitimate national rights, urging the international community to push for a comprehensive and lasting resolution to the conflict. Speaking at the 58th session of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, China's permanent representative to the UN, Qin expressed deep concern over the humanitarian crisis in the occupied Palestinian territories, particularly in Gaza. Qin emphasized that the two-state solution remains the only viable path to peace and reaffirmed that Gaza is an inalienable part of the Palestinian lands. He also stressed that post-conflict governance in Gaza must uphold Palestinian self-rule and rejected any forced displacement of its people. United Nations humanitarian workers say the expansion of kitchens, water points and healthcare facilities is gradually improving living conditions for Gaza residents. In a statement, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, the OCHA, emphasized that the UN and its partners are seizing every opportunity to increase life-saving assistance in the region. Efforts continue to address the critical humanitarian needs amid ongoing challenges. US President Donald Trump has stated that his administration has held productive talks on Gaza and is working towards solutions for the Middle East.
It's a rough situation, but I think we're going to make it much better. And I think that we've had a huge impact on that since we've been in just the 4 weeks. I think we've had a huge impact on Gaza, the Middle East, and we have some pretty good talks going on concerning lots of other people that are going to make it better. So we'll see what happens. Nobody really knows, but we'll see what happens. But I think we've had a very positive impact.
The United Nations has announced on Thursday a 5-day vacation campaign resulted in over 600,000 Palestinian children under the age of 10 in Gaza being vaccinated against polio. UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric announced the completion of the campaign, which was launched after the discovery of the polio virus in sewage water samples from Deir el-Balah and Khan Yunis in December and January. Palestinians in Gaza's Khan Yunis have geared up for the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, with some light decorations set up between the rubble and crowds shopping in markets. Despite a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, people in the Palestinian enclave remembered Ramadan before the war and said the festive atmosphere is overshadowed by the struggle of daily life. The Egyptian State Information Service has confirmed that delegations from Israel and Qatar have arrived in Cairo to continue negotiations on the Gaza ceasefire. American representatives are also taking part in the discussion. The concerned parties have already begun intensive talks focusing on the next phases of the ceasefire agreement. Efforts are underway to ensure the implementation of the previously agreed upon terms. In addition, mediators are exploring ways to enhance the delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza with the aim of alleviating the suffering of the population and supporting regional stability. For more analysis, we now move to Selma Marwan in our newsroom.
Thank you, Mona. And for further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by the managing editor of Al Ahram newspaper, Mr. Ashraf Al Ashri. Mr. Ashraf, thank you so much for joining us on Qnews. And let me first start by asking you, how critical is international pressure in ensuring that both Israel and Hamas adhere to the terms of the ceasefire agreement, particularly in advancing to the next phase?
Good evening to you and to the viewers. So far, there is no guarantee that anyone will commit, that Israel would commit to the ceasefire agreement. Hamas announced yesterday and today that they want to settle and to go to the next phase, provided that there are guarantees for Israel to withdraw from Gaza and commit to the ceasefire, applying the humanitarian protocol. But Netanyahu is stalling and sent a delegation to Cairo without any mandates, and he's working to restore all the bodies and detainees in 45 days without any compromise or understanding with the Hamas regarding the ceasefire agreement and also the Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. Consequently, this will lead to further negotiations regarding the second phase that is going to be very complex and difficult, because Netanyahu obviously does not want to settle or commit to what has been agreed upon during the past January in Doha for the three-phase agreement. After the end of the first one, the second and third will face a lot of complications, because Netanyahu now has the support of the US administration without any desire of completing the ceasefire or withdrawing from the Gaza Strip, except with the very difficult and impossible conditions that he placed to disarm Hamas and remove it completely from Gaza, and Hamas said that is totally unacceptable.
Mm-hmm. Now, regarding the humanitarian aid to Gaza, what are the challenges surrounding it? And if you can expand on the role Egypt plays in delivering humanitarian aid to it.
Egypt plays an integral role also in the negotiations and reaching the first phase of the truce During the past few days, there were a lot of excuses and Israeli impediments to get out of the first phase by Netanyahu, and Egypt intervened more than once, even with delivering the four lost bodies and the rejection by Israel to release the Palestinian detainees on last Saturday, giving the excuse that the protocol of detainee exchange are provocative to the Israeli community, and therefore they refrained from holding their end of the bargain. And here Egypt intervened to push forward the release of Israeli bodies and the release of Palestinian detainees. And so far, there is no intention by Netanyahu to respond to the Egyptian Qatari proposals and even the US support. And we are waiting for Steve Witkoff to reach the Middle East next Sunday to supervise these negotiations with cooperation with Egypt and Qatar. He might provide some guarantees to pressure Netanyahu and Israel to handle this matter positively and enter the second phase without any excuses, obstacles, or any the Israeli violating and stalling Israeli practices, which would lead to prolonging the negotiations unless there is a US pressure in this very difficult phase, because Netanyahu is not willing to withdraw or continue the ceasefire. Because this would lead to the resignation of his government, including Smotrich and the far-right officials.
Regarding the Emergency Arab Summit to be held in Cairo on March 4th, where a reconstruction plan in Gaza will be presented without displacement, what are your expectations regarding its key outcomes?
Of course, this is an extraordinary, urgent summit. It was very well prepared by the Egyptian side with a complete, comprehensive and integrated proposal regarding the Gaza reconstruction with different phases and timings. This was offered and presented with Arab parties and states and even the European Union by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Egypt. Which all approved this proposal. I think this will be a very successful summit and will play a pivotal role to counter the proposal of Netanyahu and Trump to displace the Palestinian population from Gaza. Egypt now is outlining an Arab project that will be provided to the international community, and Trump following the summit to agree on the Gaza reconstruction plan to hold an international conference for the Gaza reconstruction and establishing a sovereign fund sponsored by the United Nations and the Arab League for the Gaza reconstruction with the Palestinian remainings on their lands, as well as a lot of political settlement negotiations with the Israeli side to implement the three-phase agreement. And what is regarding the day next the war to regarding the governance of Gaza Strip, this conference will establish the pillars of the comprehensive political process through the Arab Initiative for Peace and holding for the establishment of a Palestinian state on the borders of 1967 with East Jerusalem as capital. So that's why this conference will be highly significant.
Now, in light of tonight's cabinet meeting to be led by Benjamin Netanyahu, what are your expectations regarding his decisions?
Of course, Netanyahu will work to present some new proposals to try to tempt Hamas and demanding Egypt and Qatar to keep mediating. But he will not provide any serious or essential proposals to stop the killing and the war in Gaza and not going back to the war again. He will also Netanyahu will provide some suggestions that are light and simple that will not either satisfy Hamas or be in line with any of the three phases agreement items after he found the support of Trump and the US administration providing a political cover to take all the measures that only serves the interests of Israel and wage the war in Gaza, and we are going to wait to see the Witkoff visit to the Middle East and what he will pledge to the mediators regarding practicing any pressure on Israel to pressure it into
Sarah, sorry for
withdrawing.
interrupting you due to shortage of time. From Cairo, that was the managing editor of Al-Ahram newspaper, Mr. Ashraf Al-Ashri. Thank you so much for joining us here on Q News. And now we're going to move back to Mona in the studio.
Thank you so much, Salma, for the analysis. And now we move on to the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
UNICEF has warned that Lebanon is grappling with immense challenges in recovering from war and economic turmoil. The agency reported that 45% of Lebanese households have been forced to cut spending on health care, while over 25% of children remain out of school despite the end of armed conflict. The crisis is particularly dire for young children, with more than half of those under 2 years old suffering from severe food insecurity in eastern Lebanon. Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam has vowed to strengthen the country's armed forces by enhancing their capabilities, training and equipment to bolster national defense. He emphasized that the army is expanding its presence in southern Lebanon to reinforce stability along the border. Salam also stated that Lebanon will not tolerate any attacks on the UNIFIL peacekeeping forces, calling for the immediate prosecution of those responsible for recent security violations. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has declared that Israel will remain in the buffer zone in Lebanon indefinitely, claiming that the move has received a green light from Washington. Speaking at a conference in Tel Aviv, Katz confirmed that Israel has submitted a map of the designated buffer zone to the United States, which has allowed Israeli forces to maintain their presence in the area without a set time frame for withdrawal. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky urged US President Donald Trump to make no compromises for Russia's leader Vladimir Putin as the two met to sign a deal for US participation in Ukraine's mineral industry. The meeting in the Oval Office comes as Kiev seeks to reinforce US support while Trump initiates talks with Moscow. Zelensky, who previously secured billions of dollars in US military aid and diplomatic backing under the Biden administration, now faces a shifting dynamic with Trump. The US president aims to wind down the 3-year war, improve ties with Russia, and reassess US financial commitments to Ukraine. In response to a worsening caregiver shortage, Japan is developing AI-driven humanoid robots to assist in elderly care. At a Tokyo University lab, the AI-driven robot, Eric, is being developed to assist in elderly care, performing tasks like repositioning patients and preventing bed sores, with Japan's workforce shrinking by 9.3% in the next decade. Waseda University researchers, backed by government funding, aim to ease caregiver shortages through robotics. Eric can already help patients sit up, dress, cook, and do household chores, like researcher Professor Shigeko Sugano expects widespread use by 2040 and full integration by 2050. While concerns persist over human interaction, experts say robots will be essential to tackling Japan's aging crisis. Firefighters are working to contain widespread fires in Japan's northeastern coastal city of Ufanato, which has been burning since Wednesday. Footage from the Fire and Disaster Management Agency shows crews extinguishing smoldering ruins and tackling a raging forest fire as thick smoke blankets the area. Authorities have deployed 1,800 personnel and 7 helicopters to combat the blaze, which has scorched approximately 600 hectares and damaged at least 84 homes and buildings, according to the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications. Efforts to bring the fire under control are still ongoing. New findings from China's Mars rover Zhurong provide key evidence that an ancient ocean once covered Mars' northern plains, raising the possibility that the planet was once habitable. According to Chinese Academy of Science, data from the rover revealed multiple layers of inclined sedimentary structures 10 to 35 meters beneath Utopia Planetiae in Mars' northern hemisphere. These geological formations closely resemble coastal sediment deposits on Earth, which only form unstable, long-standing bodies of water. The discovery suggests that Mars may have experienced a prolonged period of warmth and moisture, increasing the likelihood that it is once supported life. Zhurong, China's first Mars rover, landed in Utopia Planeta in May 2021. Countries meeting in Rome have reached a late-night agreement to mobilize $200 billion annually by 2030 to halt and reverse biodiversity loss. The UN's COP16 biodiversity talks, which began last October in Colombia, had stalled over financing issue, leading to this week's negotiation in Rome. The breakthrough comes amid global geopolitical tensions as US President Donald Trump scales back development finance commitments led by negotiators from BRICS nations. The agreement outlines a plan to secure at least $200 billion per year from various sources to protect global ecosystems. Into the economic sector, in the stock markets, global shares showed a mixed performance on Friday. Futures for the S&P 500 rose 0.3% and futures for the Dow Jones Industrial Average hiked 0.36%. In Europe, Germany's DAX fell 0.2% and the CAC 40 in Paris gave up 0.1%. Britain's FTSE 100 rose 0.58%. In Asia, Tokyo's Nikkei 225 index lost 2.9%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng index dropped 3.3%, while the Shanghai Composite index lost 2%. South Korea's Kospi gave up 3.4%. In Australia, the S&P ASX 200 shed 1.2%. Bitcoin's price plunged to $78.273 on Friday, marking its lowest levels since November 10, 2024, and is on track for its biggest weekly decline in over 2 years. The cryptocurrency has fallen 16% this week, its steepest drop since the collapse of the FTX exchange in November 2022. CoinGecko has revealed that the broader cryptocurrency market has also suffered, losing nearly $500 billion in value over the past week. That's all for now. Here is a wrap-up of what we've been covering. Hamas reaffirms full commitment to implementing all terms of Gaza ceasefire agreement. President Trump announces productive talks on Gaza and ongoing efforts for the Middle East solutions. And delegations from Israel and Qatar and the US arrive in Cairo for ongoing Gaza ceasefire negotiations. This concludes our economic bulletin for today. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Q News EGY to stay informed. Many thanks for watching and good night.